E siamo live. Buonasera e benvenuti ad una nuova puntata live di Product Heroes. Product Heroes è la prima tech community dedicata al prodotto che parla italiano. Se volete rimanere aggiornati su tutte le nostre news e i prossimi live, iscrivetevi al nostro canale YouTube e cliccate la campanella che trovate a fianco per essere notificati su tutte le nostre prossime dirette. Io sono Sara Tortoli, vi parlo da Berlino e sono la vostra host ed è mio compito intervistare per voi product leaders da tutto il mondo con l'obiettivo di ricavarne le best practice e le lesson learned che puoi mettere in pratica fin da subito nella tua azienda. La puntata di oggi è veramente una puntata delle prime volte, come annunciava la newsletter, perché è la nostra prima puntata English speaking. So, facciamo questo esperimento tutti assieme. E chi meglio dell'ospite che abbiamo oggi per cominciare questa prima internazionalizzazione di Product Heroes, perché il nostro ospite di oggi si chiama Miguel Carruego ed è VP Product a Prontopro. Di sé dice: I'm a programmer who turned IT, who later turned to design and then ended up in product. È argentino e vive a Milano nei passati 2 anni e adesso ha aiutato Prontopro a trovare il suo market fit. In realtà quello che non vi dice è che parla un po' di italiano, ma preferisce che non si sappia. Quindi io do il benvenuto a Mike. Hello, Mike. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Sara, and hello to everyone. Ciao a tutti. That's all the Italian you can get.
That's not true. I think it's way more than you let out. But also, let's say hello to our audience. Hi, guys. And please let us know in the comments who you are, where you're coming from, and if you're following us from YouTube or from LinkedIn or from Twitch, actually. We're also live on Twitch at the same time. So let us know in the comments. And let's start this journey together. Mike, I am so excited to talk with you because usually, we have Italian PMs who works abroad, right? They come here and they give us their international experience. This time is the other way around because you're coming from abroad because you're Argentinian, but you actually live and work in Italy. So it's a completely 360, right? From our usual guest profile. And I'm so curious, can you tell us a little bit more about how did you end up in Italy and a Pronto Pro from Argentina?
Yes.
Sorry. It's on the other side of the world. So.
It is. It's actually a nice question. So I guess that my relationship with product began, I don't know, but more than 10 years ago. It's just that it wasn't called product, or at least it wasn't called product for me. And for me, it was the name was, I was a UX lead or something related to UX, and that was it. So I was actually doing product without not knowing that I was doing product. I guess this is the case for many people in product. Yeah. And that was it. It was just me working in this very big and famous consultancy that I don't want to name. And at some point, well, the team I was leading, it grew a lot. I got a bit sick of the leading and the management, and it was too complex for me. I felt frustrated, and I said, I want to go back to the simple things. I want to be a designer, because I came from design, and actually, yes, I quit my job and I went back to my comfort zone, and I said, okay, fuck it, I'm let's just go to design. And I began in Tienda Nube as a designer again. So I went a couple, steps back in my career, but it was okay for me. I was very happy at the time. And then I don't know what happened. I start, making decisions again, and I was, excited about the product we were building, and I wanted to make calls and decisions. And all of a sudden, I was a product owner. At that time, it was called a product owner. And then it was one team, then another team, then two teams, and then all of a sudden, I was a head of product. I don't know how it happened. But it happened, and I was super excited. I was in love. I actually found, when I was a head of product, I discovered what I loved, and that was it. And I told to myself, okay, this is it. This is what I want to do the rest of my life. And that's where I got a call from Marco Liengo, out of the blue, on LinkedIn. And that was it for me. There was this opportunity of helping Pronto Pro scale. There was this struggle of internationalization and growing the business and moving forward. And it was a why not moment. And it was, for me, it was very exciting. Of course, I felt I was not ready at all. I still feel I'm not ready, but and that was it. And all of a sudden, I was in Milan.
Can we reveal the product manager biggest secret now, or do we do it later? Meaning that everyone has to deal with imposter syndrome basically every step of the way.
It comes with the job description.
Yeah,
probably. Yes, you have this feeling of I have no idea what I'm doing.
Totally.
All the time. And that was it. And that was that's how I landed in Milan.
Yeah, totally. Like, I guess it comes a little bit with the job description, as you say, because it's like this huge amount of responsibility that all of a sudden gets thrown to you, right? And everyone is expecting you to have the answer. And so this leads me to the next question, right? So you arrive in Milan, right? And what did you find? And first of all, what is Pronto Pro for the people that maybe are following us but don't know this product, don't know what is it about? And so tell us a little bit more about this. You arrive with your experience, a little bit of the imposter syndrome, right? What do you find? And in the meantime, before you answer, I just remind everyone who's just connected to let us know in the chat if you have any question, and we will ask Mike later.
So when I came to, so basically Pronto Pro, for those who don't know, is a services marketplace. So, and it's a horizontal marketplace, meaning that you can find in Pronto Pro any type of services, from house-related services like plumbing or electricians or painters, or to wedding planners or lawyers or psychologists, or the most diverse thing you could think. Yes, and basically when I joined Pronto Pro 2 years ago, the company was more of a tech company, and there was no product structure, and basically there was one project manager, kind of, Matteo, the amazing Matteo, and the CEO was an interim VP product, sort of, and he was leading the product, basically, which is a very common thing, that the CEOs does the first phase of the product. And then, well, the team was not that small, the engineering, the technology team, but they were working on a very Scrumish type of way, just 2-week sprints, and planning was a bit of a mess. And there was, of course, because there was no product structure, there was no also product direction or vision or anything. There was the vision of Marco, and that was it. But I had to fill in all the blanks. And that was it when I came. Today, it's a very, very, very luckily, it's a very different situation where we have a product team.
And this is exactly what I want to talk about with you, because as you mentioned, when you came, like you had basically like the foundation, of a startup, where still one of the founder, which is actually, as I said, really often the case, right? Until one point, there is a founder that does also the product manager, somewhat the role of the product manager. And then you like when they're starting to scale, then they hire their first PM. And so my question to you is, how do you build, the product foundation?
Yes, it's actually really tough. It's a tough job, and I will say, Sarah, that of course the answer is depends. As usually, it's a typical answer of a product manager. It depends, and I think that in the case of Pronto Pro, I had to build from the basis, and I began with this typical the three P's, which are processes, people, and product. And that was it for me. At the very beginning, it was almost everything about processes.
Like, for example,
well,
if
mainly,
you give us a checklist, like of actions and steps that you took, what will this checklist look like?
It's a long checklist, but I will try to summarize. So I think that the basics of the processes that I try to define is what I call the decision stack, which is this combination of mission, vision, strategy, goals, which can come in the form of OKRs or whatever you use. So the combination of all of these are the foundations of whatever process you define. It doesn't matter. But this is the most basic thing. And actually, this was probably one of the first questions that I did when I came to Pronto Pro. I had meetings with the founders and with the leaders and everyone. And I was asking everyone the same question, like, what is the vision of Pronto Pro? What is the vision of Pronto Pro? What are we trying to do? And I was taking notes. And then I waited 2 or 3 days, and I went back again to them and asked the same question, like, what is the vision of Pronto Pro? And of course, I got different answers every time.
All the time? Yeah.
Yes,
not just from different people, but
and even every different answer from the same person. So
okay.
So that was the flag that told me, okay, Mike, you need to build this. So that was it for me. That was the thing number one. This stack of processes, and then basically I had, because the company was working on, it was just a sort of software factory, and it was just delivering, and constantly delivering. So the first process that I had to introduce was a sort of discovery process. So, okay, we're not just producing software, but we need to understand what are the problems, we need to understand what are the priorities, what are the customer needs, etc., etc. So the first thing that I did was to, and try to embed and force this discovery process. And then I tried to time box the delivery process. And my secret weapon, which is a very common thing today, is product cycles. For me, cycles is a very nice recipe. Of course, it's not bulletproof, and you need to find your own version of it. But with this weapon, I said, okay, let's define a sort of discovery process. Let's define the delivery process. Let's time box what the team will produce, and with that, I tried to build a sort of roadmap. So I had the full picture. I had the mission, the vision, the strategy, the goals, then precisely what we were doing, and then once you have more or less that, it's all about the product. and the people. For me, the people is, of course, it's fundamental. It sounds very obvious, but finding the right people to work in product is, I think, it's also one of the most important things that you should do as a leader.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later on in the interview, because I think that will open up an entire new chapter, right?
Yes, probably.
And
yes.
But before getting into that, I would like to deep dive a bit more into what you just saying, like about this product cycle, etc. And so I would like to get back there and ask you, what does the discovery process look like? And how does the delivery process look like? And how do they connect with each other?
Yes. So today, of course, it's very different from what was happening 2 years ago, and then the first versions, let's say, of this process in Prontopro. And today we have, I think, a very nice version of it, where we basically do this 8 weeks cycle. Originally 6 weeks, but today we extended it a little bit. So we have these 8 weeks cycles where we do discovery of the following cycle and delivery of the current cycle all at the same time, and that's the tricky part. Yeah. That's the difficult part, which is discovering and delivering at the same time. Because another constraint of Prontopro is that it's a startup company, it's a scale-up company.
Sure.
Time to market is one of the main variables in here, which I guess is it's the same for many companies, and therefore I had to prioritize time to market, and I had to have predictability. I need to know, okay, when are we going to bring this thing that we're doing, this impact, this value to the customers, and that was thing number one. So today the discovery process is mainly driven, of course, by the product managers. But we have a team of researchers, and the designers are also involved in the discovery process. But mainly the researchers are one cycle before.
Yeah.
So they're researching the things that will be discovered the next cycle that we will deliver the other cycle. So they're like 2 cycles ahead. And the research team does absolutely everything that you can think of in terms of research ceremonies and methods and tools. We do everything. We do interviews, we do workshops, we do surveys, we do user testing, you name it, we do it. And we try different things every time.
How important is that? Because usually, like when you're thinking about product management, like you're always thinking about data and like how data are important in like informing our decisions. So do we really, that's kind of a provocative question, but do we really need, and you're already laughing, do we really need a research department to do this extensive testing and so forth? Isn't it a bit of overkilling? Because the most popular argument is, but it's not statistically significant. Mm-hmm. Right? And in the meantime, before you answer, because the chat is awfully silent today, usually it's a bit more lively, the chat. So guys, you can also write in Italian your questions and I will translate the question, but ask away. Okay.
Yes. So going back to how important is this research process versus data. And this was also something that was very tough for me. It was not a simple journey. It was not that I came to Prontopro and I say, we're going to do this discovery with researchers, and that was no, absolutely not. I had to fight, I would say, for a couple months to justify the value of research and to explain why it was important and the value we could get out of it. And it was, this was mainly a, let's say, data-driven company, which is something I don't like, let's say. I don't like companies who brag about being data-driven. I prefer the term data-informed because, of course, I have absolutely anything against scientific methods and scientific experimentation. It's the right way to go. But it's not all. It's not all. And when you don't have product market fit, you need to go and speak with your customers and ask, what do they need? That's it. It's not rocket science. It's just go to the clients, and ask them, what do you need? What do you want? What are your problems? What are your struggles? How can I help you? How can I unlock things for you?
But let me segue to this one, right? Because aren't you then? When did you ask enough this question, right? Because I'm really sure that if you ask if you stop 5 people on the street and you ask them, everyone will have a different opinion, right? So when is it that what is the right number to start noticing some pattern, right? Considering that, you don't have numbers is, aren't you risking to compromise like your vision and at the same time not listening enough to data? So it's a complex question in reality.
Yes, it's a very complex question, and I don't have an absolute answer, of course, in anything. But what I did, Sarah, was basically try to push this research team and every analysis that we did to be as data informed as possible. Mm-hmm. So not only to go and to research and to dig deep onto this problem that these and these and these merchants had, but also trying to quantify how big that problem was. And then the other key here is segmentation, definitely. So the thing is that you have a customer base and you cannot just look at the whole thing as a whole. And you need to segment it. And one thing I think we did very well, still we haven't exploited that as much as I wanted, but one thing we did was segmented, we did a behavioral segmentation. So because of course one way to segment Prontopro is by verticals, so by profession, so the plumbers and the electricians, and those are very clear segments. But then you have let's say the type of users and how they behave and how they use your platform, and that's another thing that it's cross. And then you have this huge matrix of segmentation. I'm not into personas. I don't like user personas. I think I don't like it. I think that because usually user personas represent an average user that doesn't exist by definition because it's average. So I prefer to go on detail, to have super precise information of real people, of real problems. And then you try to quantify that with usually surveys, for instance. So you do interviews, you do workshops, you go very into deep with 10 people, 20 people, because you cannot do it with more than that. But then you grab that information and you do a survey with 1,000 people or 2,000 or 10,000, doesn't matter. So a big number that it really can represent. That is statistically representative of your customer base. And then you draw the conclusion. Of course, in this process, there are leaps of trust. And the product manager has to put their gut into this. And that's the tough part. But of course, I'm a product person, so I was, fully supporting this process. But I got a lot of resistance.
And then we're going to talk about the resistance and the hiring later on. But I wanted to go back 1 second. And guys, we're going to get to the question in the chat. Thank you for asking in the meantime, and we're going to take them. So, but I want to go back 1 second to the discovery delivery. Because we talked about the discovery just now, but what does the delivery look like? And how did you interface with the engineering team, for example, with the devs? That dev stands for developers, short for developers.
Yes. So it was really tough at the beginning because basically the whole process of delivery, it was not designed for a product structure. It was not designed for change and for for instance, for killing something in the middle, or for time boxing. Of course, the first time I came to Prontopro and I said to the engineers, okay, guys, from now on, the deadlines are fixed and you need to just, do it by that time. And everyone was looking at me like, what are you talking about? No, I mean, you cannot put a deadline. We put the deadlines. We estimate, the size of our work. So that was not an easy journey, definitely. And one of the things that was blocking us mainly, but this is a Prontopro thing, was the release process, which was the way we go to production. It was in a very, structured by batch, by releases, and it didn't give us enough autonomy. So we also had to change that. So I also had, let's say, to intervene and to intervene the tech department and to help them understand what was the best process, the best release process and delivery process that this new product organization needed, which was a much more agile and dynamic type of structure, and not just this very waterfallish type of structure where you do all the phases and then at the end you do the QA and you release. And we needed, for instance, to experiment fast in 1 week, 2 weeks, and it was impossible, of course.
And how long is now a delivery cycle for you? Like, do you do sprints? Do you do?
So luckily, so now the time box is, of course, the cycle. So every squad has these 8 weeks to deliver everything that they are supposed to deliver. But they're not time bound to the specific things, because, I don't know, for instance, they have 5, 6, 7 projects per cycle, and they have the freedom to go whenever they want, the way they want. And this happens. There's no time bound to anything. It might happen every 2-3 days or every 1 or 2 weeks. Depends. It really depends.
Okay. I'm taking one question from Adriano. Ciao, Adriano. How did you go about working with the CEO in terms of managing responsibilities? In my experience, it's quite difficult to get CEOs of early stage startups to let go of their baby and focus on other things. That's an interesting challenge.
Yes. Very much. So first, thank you, Adriana, for the question. I don't know if you know the history of Prontopro, because it seems you know something, because you actually asked the most difficult question. And it was not easy. It's definitely one of the most difficult things when you need to remove the CEO from their child. And for me, it was a very slow and by phases process. So, okay, first I was making the calls on the process, but still the CEO was making decisions on the features or the vision, or so big chunks of the whole thing. Then on a later moment, and that lasts for a couple of months. Then on a later moment, I introduced another thing, okay, now we're gonna do whatever, OKRs. So I'm also involved in the definition of the goals. And then I removed that piece. And then a couple of months later, I was like, okay, now I'm going into the details of the product, and the features and the shaping of the product. And then I removed that piece of it. So slowly, yeah, one day Marco woke up and he was like, "Oh shit, what's going on with product? I don't know what they're doing." And of course he had to be aware of, but it had to be a slow process, piece by piece. And piece by piece, I mean in this decision stack. So the first stack, being the mission, then the vision, the strategy, the definition of the goals, definition of the cycles in our case. So I had to do thing by thing because it was the only way. Of course, removing everything at once, it's impossible. But it was impossible in our case.
Totally. Like I guess that's quite a difficult challenge, right? Like they build it, it was their baby, and now you come and you want me to tell you how to do my own thing, but I got it up until now,
Yes, absolutely. I have to say I was very lucky that even Marco, sorry, man, yeah, but the CEO that was at that moment, he acknowledged his lack of, let's say, product skills or product knowledge. So that made everything a bit easier. So it was not a one-on-one, let's say, discussion. He acknowledged the things that he didn't know. So that he gave me the space. If you have to fight the space yourself, it's a very tough position to be. And the only way to win those spaces is if you bring value as soon as possible to prove yourself. And that's a very tough thing to do because fighting the processes and fighting everything and at the same time bringing value to prove yourself and to prove the product organization, good luck. It's probably too much.
Piece by piece, right? A little piece of time goes a long way, right?
Yes, piece by piece. And the last advice is let the vision for the last. Because the vision is the baby.
Okay. That's a good one, guys. I hope you're all taking notes.
So do not, if you're being introduced into a company that has been founded by the CEO and he's doing product, do not go and challenge the vision immediately. I don't think that's a good idea. You let that for the end. Also, because you need to gain time and knowledge and business and know-how into what is going on and what are the possibilities of the company. And to that, you need time. It's not going to happen overnight. So it's not that you can come into a company and say, no, the vision has to be different. No, it's impossible. So leave that to the very end.
I agree, 100%. I think that's a very wise advice for everyone who's in a startup and is first or almost first hire as a product manager. Second question we got from Marco Ottone. Hello, Sarah, and hello, Miguel. Hello, Marco. Can you tell us more about the current product organization in Pronto Pro? So first of all, how many product managers are you and how did you structure them, right?
So today we have 3 product managers. So today we have 3 squads. And something I came to realize like a couple months ago was that I prefer to complement the role of the product manager with more people instead of adding more product managers. So something, for instance, we introduced was the product analyst role, and we're now trying to define better what a product analyst do and how it can help the product manager. And so today we have squads, the Spotify way, kind of, where yes, in a squad you have front-end engineers, back-end engineers, a designer, QA, data scientist, product manager, and so on, and a product analyst in some squads. And that's pretty much it. And so today, when we talk about the product team in Pronto Pro, the product organization is the product managers plus the product analysts plus the product researchers, plus the designers. And that's what, when we talk about product, that's it. And it's, let's say, it's a separate department or organization from technology. But of course, we work all together. And then, yes, we the technology team, of course, complements this, and we work in these 8 weeks cycles. And we say we are connected somehow to the company strategy through OKRs. So there's a set of company OKRs that cascade into the product OKRs, which are usually in a central position of the OKRs. Sometimes they are the same, like the company OKRs are the product OKRs, because we are a product company, and we the product management team tries to make that happen. Through these cycle processes.
So that's very interesting. So you mentioned that you have a product manager, of course, a product researcher, a product analyst, and a product designer. So in every squad you have these 4 figures.
Yes.
Right. So what does the product analyst do in this context, for example? Because I mean, like in some teams it's called business analyst, and some like I think it really depends. So I'm like quite curious on the definition here.
We're actually on the process of a transition of this role, but today I can just to simplify it and to summarize it. We have 2 type of analyst role. One is the product analyst, and the other is the business analyst or the data analyst or the data scientist, which is a more comprehensive role. And basically, the product analyst, to simplify it, it's a product manager without a team. So it does pretty much the same things. It does discovery, it understands what are the problems, it does analysis, and also collaborates in the shaping the solutions and so on and so forth. So, but it doesn't have a team yet. So it only helps the product manager on specific areas and specific topics. And then, yes, we have the more data type of role, which is the data scientist role, which is a purely analytical role, that it does analysis, but also do data modeling, or they design, I don't know, machine learning algorithms and all that stuff that I understand very few. Struggling to understand.
That's fine. And then that's very interesting. So the product designer and the product manager I'm not gonna cover. That should be self-explanatory, but the product researcher, you mentioned that instead works 2 cycle ahead of everyone else. So it's like the owner of the discovery in all of this, right? And then the product analyst is instead more analyzing the delivered items, how are they perceived, stuff like that, correct?
Yes, and these more type of business KPIs, or maybe they analyze the implementation of a solution. If something, the typical example is if something is rolled out by A/B test, they need to draw conclusions out of the A/B test and to analyze what happened. So usually that's the type of analysis. But yes, the discovery begins with the researchers, usually 2 cycles ahead. That is more or less 4 months, which is a lot. Not always we are perfect with this. Of course, it has some deviations, but more or less, yes, that's how the discovery begins. And yes, it begins with very raw information coming directly from our customers.
Totally.
And then we try to shape it.
Okay. And the product manager, I guess, is the one that puts all of it together, decides what gets done, what
Correct.
doesn't get done, etc. Okay, second question, and last from the audience, because then I have a couple of my own as a segue. My second question is, what are the biggest product-related challenges in Pronto Pro?
Ooh, I don't think we have time, but yes, very good question. I think, of course, the number one problem or challenge in terms of product-related challenge in Pronto Pro is that, in my terms, in my definition of product market fit, we don't have product market fit, and I'm very tough with this.
What's the definition that you have of the product market fit, right?
Yes.
Then
That's also a very nice question. And usually, every time you ask a product manager, what is product market fit, you get a sort of similar answer, but not always the same. And for me, there's many answers to this. There's like super technical answers. How can I answer this shortly? There's three versions of the answer. There's one simple, which is product market fit is you know it when you have it. It's you have a product that people loves, and the thing makes money. It's profitable. The two signs that you need to know. That's a very simple answer. The analytical data point answer is, for me, I think it's the simplest. The pirate framework, the R matrix. Yes, right. So if you're good at acquiring, if you're good at activating, if you're good at retaining, if you're good at revenue, okay, then you have some sort of product market fit. And then there's the more conceptual type of answer, which is the distance between your customer needs and your value proposition. And it is important, the word distance, because what's important to understand for me, in my opinion, about product market fit is that it's not something tangible. It's not something it's not a moment you achieve. It's not something you have. It's a moving target, and I like this definition of it's a distance. It's a distance between your value proposition and your customer needs, and that distance is never going to be zero. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist the perfect product, in my opinion. There are amazing products who have amazing product market fit, but it's never perfect. So I think that, to summarize it, in this super, let's say, tough definition of what product market fit is, Pronto Pro does not have product market fit. Because all of this, yes, all of this doesn't check. If you have this huge checklist, not everything is green. And then the other challenge of Pronto Pro is that you need to segment, because Pronto Pro is a monster business, and we have more than 500, 700 different services that we offer in Pronto Pro. And Pronto Pro is in Italy, but also is in Spain, also is in Germany, in Switzerland, Austria, blah, blah, blah. And so then the question is, okay, where do you have product market fit? When do you have product market fit? Versus what? So it's a super tough question. But I think that this is the biggest product-related challenge that we have today in Pronto Pro, which is finding this combination of things that will make a product that people love in every market, for every service, in every region, and that in the end, it makes money for the company. So definitely not easy. I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
But how then? So if the challenge is we haven't yet found our product market fit, then the $1 million question is, how do you find it then? Where is the map towards product market fit?
Well, If I knew that answer, Sarah, I will be a millionaire. I wouldn't be here. Yes, I will be driving a Lamborghini in Lago di Como. No, so I don't have an answer. I don't have a recipe, of course, but I do have a method, and I trust the method. I trust the scientific approach, which is, okay, I don't know what is the answer. I don't know the perfect map to product market fit.
But what would you do then? Let's say, like, what are you currently doing? Let me phrase it like this. What are you currently doing to try to find the product market fit?
Right. So
maybe that's a better question.
Yeah. No. But is following this recipe of scientific experimentation.
Yeah.
Let's summarize it like that, which is, we don't know the answer. We're trying to solve a problem that is very complex that maybe other companies couldn't also crack yet. So how do we solve this? Well, just by experimenting. And we have hypotheses that we try to test as fast as possible. We try to be as close as possible to our customers. And we just iterate, and try to build from that. So it's not a map that you have and you just follow the steps. No, you do one by one.
And like, can you give us an example of one of those tests? Like, what would be a typical test that you will do to verify one of your hypotheses, for example?
Oh, there's infinite examples.
Introduce A/B testing. What does it look like?
Well, the typical is A/B testing. Mm-hmm. Even though I wrote an article to speak bad about A/B testing.
Which, by the way, I recommend to everyone. It's a very interesting article.
It's not that I speak bad about A/B testing. It's, I try to criticize a little bit the process, and that's it. So I'm not against A/B testing. This is important to say. Mm-hmm. But I think there are many flaws in the way we usually do A/B testing and we do science, let's say. So yes, for Prontopro also it's usually yes A/B testing, or sometimes we are bolder, let's say. And we do, a before-after test or something like that. We're like, okay, when we are absolutely convinced, we just do it. And of course, we measure absolutely everything. But I try to push forward without too much hesitation. Again, because time to market for us is very important.
Yeah. Do you have any tool that you would recommend for A/B testing that you're using?
No, not specific. No, and not because we build our own A/B tests. We're not using any tool. We do the typical thing, which is split traffic 50-50. Which usually with code is like, okay, IDs who are even goes this way, uneven goes this way, and that's it. And then we just measure.
Okay.
But no, I wouldn't stick to any tool. I don't like to stick to tools. Just you need to keep trying different things.
But I want to go back 1 second, because you're mentioning this, and then you're mentioning that you love to segment related to behavior, right? Rather than personas, because personas are kind of trying to caging something, and somewhat stereotypizing something, So like, if you have to look at behavioral instead, what would be the marker that you look for, to understand like a story? Where is the story,
So today, this segmentation we call it's based on what we call mindsets. Mm-hmm. And basically we just try to measure the relationship between them, these customers, in our product. So, okay, we try to understand their journey, their user journey, how they do their jobs, what they do when they wake up in the morning, what they do during the week, and then we try to connect all the dots with our product and what are the things that they need from us, and what are they trying to do with us through that, and actually. We sophisticated this a little bit to a point that I cannot even explain it. But basically, yes, we typified some signals on the database, and with machine learning, one of these amazing data scientists in the team, we clustered the merchants, and we were able to match and to map these mindsets that we found through research with real data.
Okay.
And now we have this ability to say, okay, this merchant is this type of merchant, this mindset A. And then mindsets have these fancy names that the researchers did, like, I don't know, the strategic planner, I don't know, something like this, or the hard worker, or something that tries to, define what that person is trying to do with Prontopro.
Miguel, I think that you're gifting us literally jewels, like diamonds with your experience. And I will definitely love to have a follow-up. But there is one thing that I want to cover with you before we leave off. And I think this is also very interesting for our audience. And it's not necessarily related to just product management. But you mentioned that there is one element that we haven't talked about, which is hiring, right? How do you hire the right people?
Yes, that's a tough question. So this is definitely one of the problems I encountered that were actually a bit of a surprise for me when I came from Argentina to Italy. I don't know, I had a different expectation. I expected that I will find amazing, I don't know, for instance, designers. And there is, of course, amazing designers in Italy. But I have this glorified vision, from Argentina, maybe, of Italian design. And then I came here and I realized basically that there was not such a big product culture. So yes, there are amazing designers, but probably they're graphic designers or I don't know, cars designers or fashion designers. Probably the best in the world, but not product designers. And the same happened to me with product managers and not to say product researchers, which is also something that is very new, I would say. So this was one of the trickiest thing at the beginning, which was finding the hubs and where to find these people in Italy and the surroundings of Italy. That was one of the first things. And then there was all of these struggle of, okay, what type of people do you look for? And usually I define these as product people, which doesn't mean anything.
Whatever that means.
But basically, I look for, let's say, three things in people for my team. One is real motivation to bring impact. So people that his passion and the thing that wakes him up in the morning is bringing impact. This is, I think, one of the most important things for product people when you're looking for product people.
Yeah.
And this is also tough. It's not that easy. It's not that easy to find, and it's not that easy to measure, let's say, in an interview process. Then another thing that I look for, and for me it's mandatory, it's what we call growth mindset. So a person who is willing to embrace feedback and change based on that feedback. That's also a very tough thing. When you have these, very traditional and scholastic people that come from universities and have 2 master degrees, and they think they are the owners of the truth, and all of a sudden you give them a feedback, and they realize they might not be right. And you need people who is, a sponge of feedback, not that is fighting back feedback constantly. And then one simple thing, Sarah, is I don't want smart assholes. Yeah, very simple.
Who are the smart assholes?
So I simplify it as smart assholes, but I came across super smart people in here, not only, let's say, within Pronto Pro, but in just knowing people, the people that interviewed, and everyone. I've seen that there's super smart people, intellectually smart people, but not very emotional, smart people.
Smart. Okay.
So emotional intelligence for me is very, very important, and also that they have, good enough social skills, let's call it. That they are able to be empathetic to others. That they are able to communicate. They are able to change the way they communicate depending on the stakeholder. So these bad called soft skills, for me, are fundamental, mostly in a product manager.
Yeah.
Who is it's constantly doing stakeholder management and discussing and communicating and negotiating. You cannot have an asshole, let's say, in your organization.
As a product manager, yeah, sounds right about right. Why such difficulties in finding those key roles, and why is that in Italy, in your opinion? This might be a little bit of a leading question, but like compared to other countries, right, where there is a strong product management culture, right? Like I think about here in Berlin. I wouldn't say Germany, but I will say Berlin, less. Okay, like there is, and like in the US, let's not even speak about that, right? But why is it? Why not in Italy as well? I don't get that.
Well, that's a tough question for me to answer. But what I see, Sarah, is more of a retention problem that Italy has. Because it's not that I don't see good Italian product people, because there are everywhere. But the problem is that they're not in Milan, they're not in Italy, like yourself, like many other examples. They are all around the world or whatever, but they don't stay in Italy. Probably because there are not enough opportunities, probably because salaries are not that good. This is something we need to speak about, which is, yes, Italian salaries are not competitive enough.
No, they are not.
German, Switzerland, which is a pain because it's very close, so that makes it very difficult. And I see the efforts of the government and some organizations, like there's this legge rientro dei cervelli or things like that.
I didn't know that.
Well, there's a law that if you're an Italian, if you come back to Italy, you get a tax cut.
Oh, okay.
So maybe you want to come back.
Not happening anytime soon.
Okay, up to you. But this
never say never, huh? But
never say never.
Never say never.
Of course, this stimulus, let's say, of the government and everything exists, but they're not enough. They're not. I mean, you didn't even knew about it.
No, I didn't knew about it. No, but then I seldom watch the news, and every time that I watch the news, it's that I sporadically open my phone, it's more. It's not this type of news that I see. I see other more colorful, if you want, news, right? More media catching, let's say.
Probably, and so it's a tough problem, of course, because it's not that salaries. It's something that is tied to the economy, and changing the economy is a very complex matter. But it's definitely something that the Italian, startup scene needs to improve.
So what could we do? Like, given that a lot of Italian product managers are like living abroad, right? But how can we instead trying to educate the people that are in Italy towards product management, right? Because most organizations don't know, like project manager, product manager, what's that,
Yes. So not to suck up, but to be honest, things like product heroes and
we love you for that, Mike.
And the master in product management, things like
we
this.
Didn't pay him, guys. I swear we didn't pay him.
This is just I'm being fully honest. Things like these are the ones that are going to help to create some traction. I hope. I think. I'm sure. Because yes, usually when you need to go to a product community, it's always in a broad community, like mind the product or things like that. But there's never a local scene that you really need to create. And I think so. Creating this scene, these places to study, to practice, to chat, to discuss, to whatever. That's very important, and this is definitely helping, I think. But we need to do a lot more.
Yeah, I think most of the time the problem is that the thing that I see here in Berlin, for example, is that it's full of international people. Like, look at me. I've been living in Berlin since the past 5 years. I barely speak German, guys. Trust me, you don't want me to speak German ever, right? But like, it's full of international people, right? And the same, of course, happens in London, etc. Paris, maybe a little bit less. Also, Paris, I think it's very, more local, let's say. But I barely see this in Milan, and so maybe like did you have any chance the experience of hiring international and?
Yes, it was not a nice experience. Yes, no, sorry. Italy, it's a very difficult country to bring talent from abroad. Very difficult. The laws, the government does not facilitate this. And then you have these problems of the value proposition of Italy. Like, okay, well, but where do I go? Do I go to Berlin, or do I go to Barcelona, where there's a lot of startup companies and there's more or less the same salaries than in Italy, but the cost of living in Barcelona is lower than in Milan. So it's really difficult. So I think it's a combination of factors where you need to think about this sort of value proposition to the people, and you need to make this package. Of course, it's not just the salary. That's one of the main things, but then is facilitating and integrating with a more diverse type of people. I don't know, one example is the fact of the language barrier. Italians, sorry to say this, but English is not the most, spread thing among Italians. And actually you speak Italian, which is a beautiful language, but it's spoken in this beautiful country only, or maybe in a couple more Icelands, but but that's it. And
It doesn't help.
it doesn't help. Definitely doesn't help. I mean, to come to live to if you put yourself in the shoes of a foreigner, an expat, when you come to Italy, you definitely need to speak Italian. You need to learn Italian. You cannot live in Italy without learning Italian.
Yeah.
And that's a blocker.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, let's not get into the political side, but
No.
well, the same could be said about Germany, and yet this is true, but it's not true in Berlin, Adriano. I can assure you, you can live in Berlin, and you can live in some areas in Berlin and never even hear German speaking. You know, like you walk on the street and you only hear English. Like it depends in which area you live, but in Berlin it's not needed to speak German. Of course, bureaucracy is in German. That's the life. But the rest, you don't need it for living and for working, to be honest. For working, not at all, like zero. It's the only pain point is the bureaucracy, and when you have to go to the doctor and make the appointment with the sisters. So that's it.
Well, try the same in Italy.
Yeah.
If you don't speak Italian.
Yeah, at least like they say they don't speak English, but they understand if you speak English, and then if you understand a bit of German, they reply in German, and so you have these totally random conversations. Okay, Mike, I would like to thank you so much. I think we have all the materials for doing a follow-up interview moving forward. I really think that you gift us like some raw diamonds in the making, that you were very, very generous with us. And for this, I really thank you. Okay. So we say goodbye together to our listeners. Thank you all very much, guys, for being with us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.